Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank. We come to you virtually from Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, and today we head down I-5 all the way to the Bay Area. If you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, this right here is the podcast for you. We like to say this is where street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon, and my co-host today out of the Bay Area is the incomparable Linda Popke. Our guest today is Julie Fry. Julie started Your Expert Guest. Julie is the founder of Your Expert Guest, a podcast booking agency for thought leaders that want visibility without spending hours on social media. She and her clients can track hundreds of thousands of dollars of business back to being a podcast guest on a top-ranked show. So she decided to come on this show, which we think is the best entrepreneur show out there. When she's not being a guest and host and a matchmaker, she loves spending time with her family. We're going to listen to this, watching SNL sketches, and of course, listening to podcasts. Julie, welcome. We'll be right with you. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube. Linda, what are we?
We are ubiquitous.
We come to you from about a dozen cities, including the mothership in Atlanta, Boston, Boca Raton, and we've got a whole bunch of new ones popping up. Now, before we bring on Julie, hello there, Linda.
Hi, how are you, Dan? Got some news in your family this week?
I've got some big news. My daughter, Mindy, one of our producers, delivered her twins on Friday. I have a brand new set of twin grandchildren, a boy named Lucas. He came out first, and Abigail is the little girl, calling her Abby. They join Ellie and Maddie, and it's amazing, Linda. I know you don't have any grandchildren yet. You've got a daughter, you got a dog. You don't have the grandchildren yet, but I'm just telling you, it's a crazy roller coaster. And you know what I did, Linda? I went back because Ellie was born after I'd already started doing the Shrimp Tank. So I was a year in. We had done our first year anniversary, and I made the announcement that Ellie was born on the Shrimp Tank. And then when Maddie was born in 2019, I had to miss the show. I was in the hospital meeting Maddie at the same time the Shrimp Tank was running. So I had to get a substitute for that week. And so I did give them the information. They shouted it out, but here I am again. When I started the Shrimp Tank, I had no grandchildren. Now I got 4. What do you think about that?
Wow. Look what working on the Shrimp Tank does for you.
Well, see, I guess if it happens to you now, I don't know your daughter's quite ready to be giving grandchildren yet, right?
No, and the dog, I don't think physically can give me grandchildren, so I don't think that's a possibility. But hey, this is what happens. Minnie is one of our producers here, so we've had to kind of struggle along without her because she's got this priority about having new kids, and she's not here with us. But good news is the kids are healthy and
everybody's
happy.
Good. And I've already apologized to Julie Fry because I have to take on, Barb's not here to help because she's helping with the twins. Mindy's unable to help right now. So I am also going to be the producer today. I hope the whole thing doesn't fall apart. Julie, you're very brave to take this on with me trying to do double duty. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited, but I hope that I do not become a grandparent as a result of being on the show. As my kids
I don't know that it's contagious. I don't know it can be passed on. If it can, we may be able to we may have a new business model. I don't know. But it makes me think, as I talked to you when we first were introduced, you mentioned, speaking about births, that you birthed this business out of COVID, that this was a business that came to you in the midst of a pandemic. Would you share with everybody your story of how you got your business started?
For sure, for sure. And thanks, Dan and Linda, for having me on, and congratulations
Thank you.
on your grandbabies. That's exciting. So, flashback to January of 2020. Seems so long ago, but at the same time, it seems like yesterday. And I had just sold my previous business, which was a networking organization for women balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship. So I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I was noticing that, there was news about this virus. And then we had the first case here in the Seattle area. And I heard about a lot of live events being canceled. And coming from the industry that I had been in, I had a lot of friends that were speakers and spoke at live events for lead generation and visibility in their business. And so as they had their speaking engagements canceled and the world is starting to panic and companies are laying off people, and I started thinking about my friends and colleagues and worrying about them and their businesses. And so one morning I was walking my dog and listening to a podcast, as I do every morning. And I sort of had this light bulb moment, because one of the things I loved in my previous business was connecting people. So usually when I meet somebody new, my mind goes to, oh, who do they need to know? We were just doing that before we got on this call. And the other piece was like, how can I help these business owners that are going to lose a big part of their lead generation? And I had the light bulb moment, like, gosh, what about connecting these speakers to podcasts? Podcasters that have interview format shows need good quality guests, and they need places to speak, and you can do it virtually. So that was the gem of the idea. And so I, kind of beta tested it a bit and saw some success, and decided to go all in May of 2020. And so just been growing ever since, and continue to love providing visibility for people that don't love marketing.
That's great. Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, for sure.
There are, I don't know, millions and millions of podcasts out there now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find the right podcast to connect the right guest to? Because it's just, it's overwhelming, I think, if you're thinking about podcasting. And how do you convince a podcaster that your guest is the right person to have on?
Yeah, those are great questions. The first thing that we go through when we bring on a new client is getting really clear on what their desired outcome is from podcast guesting. So there's a variety of different benefits, some of them being building your network, some of them search engine optimization, but the primary one for most of our clients is growing their list of leads and potential new clients. So I'll just use examples of some of our clients. So we brought on a new client who she is a business strategist for wellness professionals. So that makes it pretty easy to, okay, well, we need to get her on podcasts that wellness professionals listen to. So it really comes back to what is the client's expertise, who do they need to get in front of, and then do the research to find the podcasts that those ideal clients listen to.
So, and I've become a podcast. Like you, I love listening to a wide variety of podcasts. One of the things that I've actually had to work with our guests, people who have become our guests, where I want to be a guest,
Mm-hmm.
is the whole concept of most of them, a lot of them don't listen to podcasts. They don't understand kind of what it is. And it seems like a foreign idea of, well, how's this even going to help me? Why would I do one? Who's going to listen? Why would anybody listen? Do you run into resistance from small business owners about being on a podcast? Or are they starting to flock to you saying, I got to get on a podcast?
I would say both. In the early days of the business, I remember having a number of calls with people that have probably heard from some business guru that, being a guest on podcasts is a great marketing strategy. And I remember one conversation in particular with a woman that, in going through our conversation, I could tell that she had no idea what a podcast was. And she thought it was a Zoom call. So yes, you can record a podcast on Zoom, but it is more just a Zoom call. So I would say there is definitely a segment of business owners that don't listen to podcasts. And so there's a lot of education required in terms of why you'd want to show up on one, how, what sort of equipment do you need for a podcast interview, how to give a great interview. There's a bit of education, especially if you've had people on your show that aren't familiar with that, you've gone through it personally. And then I would say the people that generally come to us have been on podcasts before. They've seen what it can do for their business. They know it's a great marketing strategy for them. They just don't have the time, energy, or desire to get themselves on podcasts. And so we take all of the legwork out of it for them so they can just show up, give a great interview, and then we take care of everything else.
So, I mean, I think it's a wonderful business to be in because you're almost like you said, like you're a matchmaker, the host. What kind of advice do you give potential guests to get the most out of their podcast experience? Because you have to manage expectations. It's not like you're on a podcast and then tomorrow $1 million worth of business shows. What is it that you tell people that kind of gets them to really understand what's going on?
Yeah, it's a long-term marketing strategy, I would say, first and foremost. There are the occasions where you go on a podcast and the right person hears you at the right time and they reach out to you. I mean, I've had it happen to me. We've had it happen to clients. But more of the norm is you are planting seeds just like you would if you were going to a networking event or speaking on stage somewhere. You're getting in front of a new audience of people that don't know about you or your business or your services, and now they do. And then you also get the benefit of links pointing back to your website. They're gonna, in the show notes, have a link to your website, your social media channels, maybe an ebook or a free giveaway that you might have. So you're getting that long-term ROI on your marketing. But in terms of setting expectations for our clients, it's that, again, kind of going back to getting clear on what is it that you're looking to get out of this, and then setting expectations correctly. One of I think the most underutilized benefits of podcast guesting is the ability to grow your professional network. So, I mean, as you both know, with every interview you have, you're creating a new connection that you can make introductions to, they can make introductions of you, and then just maintaining those relationships over time, that's how you grow a successful business, is through your network. So that's something that we definitely talk to all of our clients about, is how to leverage that relationship with the host, for sure.
So, it's interesting. We've just been talking a lot about it from the small business and the entrepreneur side. There's another side, and that's podcast hosts, people like Linda and me. You've, as Linda said, to use the word ubiquitous, podcasts have become ubiquitous. How do you manage just the numbers of potential podcasts with those that you would deem to be serious podcasters, as opposed to what I would say maybe people who are doing it for a hobby? I don't know. I think there's obviously different levels of skill and expertise in podcasting. And then, it'll probably go to the range of, these are really established podcasts, and I'm going to have to do some work to convince them. Talk about how your relationship with the podcasters is going and how that works.
So as you mentioned, I think there's 2.8 million podcasts now, but a much smaller percentage of those are actually active. I think the number is about 500,000. So obviously that's number one criteria, is we only are booking our guests on active podcasts. From there, most of our clients, because they either have a podcast of their own, or they're looking to reach an engaged audience. So we have benchmark criteria that we look at before we are pitching a guest. So we're looking at, does the podcast have a certain number of episodes? Does the podcast have a website, or is it a part of the overall host business website? What is their sound quality like? Does it sound like they're speaking to you from a tin can, or does it sound professional like yours? So we go through a number of criteria to first establish, is this a podcast that we would feel good about getting one of our guests on? And then once we check those boxes, Then we move to the looking at the kind of the industry specific criteria of making sure that it meets our desire for the client to meet their goals of either getting in front of the right audience or creating those right professional connections.
Well, speaking of the right professional connections, we got to pay the bills, Julie, and we're going to do that here with our first commercial break. We're going to take that short break to hear from today's Spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Julie Fry, for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to see what Julie thinks about scripted questions. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And guess what? Now you're getting me doing the producer role. So let's see how I do. Does this sound like you? I'd love to write a book, but I just don't have the time. In fact, I'm not sure where to even start. Maybe you have a compelling story to share or valuable advice for clients and prospects. If only you could get that story out of your head and into a published format. Think you don't have the time to write a book? Think you aren't a good enough writer to get your message across? Think this sounds too overwhelming? Think again. At Leverage to Market Associates, we help aspiring authors transform that long stock book idea into an attractive published work. If you've written most of your book, we can help edit your work and drive it through the production process. If you're not sure where to start, we'll coach you through the creative process to organize your thoughts and create a compelling book outline. And if you're just not comfortable writing a book yourself, we can ghostwrite for you. Contact Leverage to Market Associates for a complimentary evaluation of your nonfiction book concept today and bring your book to life. And what I do have to say is Linda helped bring Captain Jack and me to life. She didn't edit Captain Jack. He wouldn't approve it, but she did edit my work. So back nine walking. Thanks for Linda for all of that. Now I think it's to you, Linda.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. Hey, you're doing a great job here. So welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. This is where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. And I'm Linda Popke, and our guest today is Julie Fry. And our next segment is Hot or Not.
Julie, this is where Linda and I pepper you with questions about business, about life, about podcasting. And you're going to tell us whether what we asked you is hot or not, and then why or why not. So, oh, and by the way, at the end, you win absolutely nothing. We just hope you have some fun with it. Hot or not, scripted questions for podcast guests as opposed to extemporaneous conversations.
It depends. I lean towards not. However, I will say that if a host has a daily show and they have a new guest on every single day, I think having scripted questions is incredibly helpful for their podcast production. Can you imagine having to come up with new questions every single day? I think it depends on the show format, but I do think from a listener perspective, listeners love the more organic conversations that are free flowing. So I'm cool with scripted questions. We provide suggested questions for all of our guests when we're, submitting them for an interview. We find that the hosts don't usually use them because they like to have a more organic conversation.
And by the way, we are the Shrimp Tank here. We're 100% organic and free range. So just so everybody knows.
Absolutely. No pesticides are used anywhere in the Okay. So, Julie, hot or not, video podcast versus audio? And we do the Shrimp Tank in both formats. So what do you think? Should it be
video hot, super hot. Yeah, there was a time, in the early days of podcasting where everybody recorded over Skype. I'm always surprised when we see a host send over Skype details for recording, as I would say that 80% of the podcasts that our guests are on are video as well as audio.
So let me ask you this. I have a quick follow-up on that, and it's interesting. I wonder if you have any demographics or metrics around this, because I am a podcast listener, but I listen when I'm driving, I'm walking the dog, I'm cooking, I'm doing something, I'm listening to I don't know that I could actually sit, even with ours, and watch 45 minutes, say, of a podcast. I just love to listen to them. have you found any information? Is there an age range? Is it based on age? Is it based on attention span? Do you have any input on what audience members tend to listen versus watch?
It is a very high percentage that listen. The watching, I think, comes more as a side benefit of being able to live stream, right? So we're live streaming on Facebook, putting this on YouTube. People can use video to incorporate into other ways that they promote the podcast. So I think the YouTube piece is great for search and, getting your podcast found, but most people listen rather than watch. I don't have exact numbers, but I could find them for you.
So I want to go back. You said for podcasters who do daily podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Is that hot or not, doing a daily podcast? That seems like a lot of work and a lot of, you've got to get people really committed to listening. So daily podcast versus weekly or biweekly or
Yeah,
less
most common is weekly, but there's monthly, there's random release, which again, those aren't usually ones that we would book clients on because they're more kind of, hey, I feel like putting a podcast up. But there's bi-weekly, weekly is the most common. There's twice weekly, and then daily. So daily, you find that more with a lot of the OG podcasters that have been doing it for a long time. They're usually shorter episodes. Oftentimes they are scripted. They're used.
Okay, I got to ask.
I
I don't know. I'm out of the loop. What is an OG?
Oh, like OG, original gangsta.
Oh.
It's like going way back in the day. It's back in the day. So those are often used by authors that are going out to do their book tour and promote their books. Yeah, but they're typically like 15 to 20 minutes in length as well.
Okay. Getting back to your business that again was born out of the pandemic. I find you're not the first that we found that a business been born out of the pandemic. I just think that there was a great opportunity for you and you just jumped on it. I'm wondering, in your business, how do you now market yourself? Where are you finding, is it high referrals? Is it networking? Are you using your own guest appearances like this on podcasts? How are you finding your clients? Or I should say, maybe how are they finding you?
Yeah, so it's usually them finding us. We're 100% referral and podcast guesting. So most of our clients come from referrals from existing clients or people in my network, and then podcast guest appearances. Those are really, I don't do any social media advertising, no paid ads, no Google ads, no in-person networking. Although, I go to conferences and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's it.
So a follow-on question to that, from your business model, if I'm a podcast guest, am I paying for your service? Or if I'm a podcast host, am I paying for your service, or both?
Yeah, no, we don't charge hosts. Clients pay us. So the podcast guest does pay to work with us. And we do 3 to 6 month engagements, depending on, what the client is looking for.
So Linda, that was a great question. Give us the whole idea of range of services. So let's say I'm a small business owner and I heard about you and I want to get on a podcast. I don't even know where to start. I don't have time to do it. Where do you take me holding my hand down the path, and when do you let go of my hand?
Oh, that's a good analogy. So we start with a quick call to see if we'd be a good fit for you. And then assuming if we are, then we would have a strategy call where we get really clear on what you want to accomplish by being a guest. Then we design interview topics for you that are going to help the ideal listeners. Basically, what problem are you solving for your clients? So those can play into interview topics. We help you come up with talking points that you want to cover in the interview. We design a branded media kit that we use in the outreach. So you've probably seen examples of those from our clients. And then we do all of the research on what would be good fit podcasts. And then we do the outreach and the follow-up because usually, you don't get a yes on the first try. You like sales, you have to follow up a few times. We do monthly check-ins with our clients to review the strategy, see how everything is working. Do we need to make any adjustments? We handle the actual booking for our clients, and that usually involves some administration, like completing the host intake guest forms. And then we also provide the guest a backgrounder so that they know what to expect going into the interview. So really what we want to do is take away all of the unknowns and just allow them to be able to show up and share their thought leadership or, their expertise and have a great interview. So that's pretty much. And then they have a portal that they can log into and kind of see what's going on with their podcasts.
That's great. That's fantastic. So I've got a question for you. I've often told clients that the internet is enduring, not endearing. Once you put something out there, it's there forever.
Mm-hmm.
So hot or not, doing a podcast episode that's about something that's evergreen, that's going to be on forever, or talking about something that's in the news today that's really pretty topical?
That is such a great question. I think both. Can I say both are hot? Because like we had a client that we worked with, he is a celebrity divorce attorney. And so he was often talking about like, what are the hot celebrity divorces going on right now? So the Kanye divorce was big news. But then he also just talks about evergreen, strategies when you're a high net worth individual and things to think about when you're getting married or divorced. So he would talk about both. And I would say that most of our clients are talking about evergreen topics as it relates to their business. But at the same time, podcast hosts, depending on the format of your show, want things that are topically relevant now. So I think that there's an opportunity for both.
Well, there's an opportunity to come back again. We've had guests come back in different situations. Let me ask you, obviously you're based out of Seattle, but like everything else, I'm guessing you have clients maybe all over the world, but at least maybe all over the country. Are you interacting with both clients and podcast hosts from around the world or around the country?
Yeah, the majority of the clients and hosts that we work with are in North America, but we have booked clients on shows in Europe, Australia. I think just that's it. I mean, most of our clients want a US focused audience, but
Sure,
there have been times when they work with people around the world. And so we can certainly work with podcasts around the world too.
wow.
Yeah, it is a truly remote business.
Okay, I'm going to ask while Linda looks up her next question.
Mhm.
How many podcasts are you listening to just for yours? Because I got to believe you've now got innumerable different podcasts. How many do you listen to just for you?
Oh, that's fun. If I had my phone here, I would show you. There are a lot, but I do, I'd say on regular weekly rotation, there's like 12 that I listen to every single week. One of them is Conan O'Brien behind me. That's my very favorite. Conan Needs a Friend. If you need a laugh,
That is
it is
Conan.
one of
That is
What
Conan.
is on Conan's head? What is that sitting on
It's his
Conan's-
pompadour.
Okay, all right. It's a little hard.
Yeah,
to
this makes
see.
good radio, by the way. Everybody who's actually listening is saying, "What are these people
You
talking
gotta go
about?"
watch this.
Yes,
You have to
yes.
go watch it.
Is one of my friends. So again, one of my friends during the pandemic took up painting, and so I asked her, "Would you paint me a picture of Conan?" And she did.
I love it. I love it. So we talked about, guests all over the world working from home, because we did that in, 2020, 2021. Now we're getting towards, oh my God, the second half of 2022. In terms of guests and being on a podcast with a video, better to be working from home? Is that hot, or better to be more in a professional office situation?
Oh, I'd say from home is hot. Usually we suggest you have a cleaner background, don't have a bunch of garbage behind you, put the dogs away. My dog is outside, my phone is out of the room. My son knows that I'm doing a podcast interview. So set the rules with the people that you live with so they know what's going on. But I think the rules of work have just changed, and everybody realizes that we all live in houses, and it's kind of fun, honestly, to get to see other people's houses. So yeah.
You know, it's
Definitely
funny that
recording
you
from home.
say that right before we go to break is I'm having some landscaping done. And this morning, it's right outside the window and it was loud. So I had to ask him, hey, between this time and this time, you guys take a break
have
or
lunch.
go somewhere
Yeah.
else or do something different because it's not going to work. So yeah, it's all part of podcasting from home. So listen, we're
Yeah,
going to take,
you learn.
yes, you do. We're going to take our second short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with Julie Fry for our Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to switch from podcast to books. She'll find out and you'll find out what I mean. So don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. Here I go again. This is my second one. Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our wonderful corporate sponsors, Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, the Kitsap Sun newspaper, BC Fitness Studio, and Upstart Group. Please visit our website at www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now, back to the show.
Boy, Dan, you got that nailed. I don't know, Barb better get back here
I
soon.
know,
We're all
she's
going to be taking over.
Job security. I don't know.
Maybe I'll
Great
have,
job.
listen, maybe I'll just have her ask the question. I'll just do the commercials.
There you go. And we'll put Barb as the host. Okay. Well, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we're interviewing the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. And I am the co-host, Linda Popke, and I don't have to do those things because we got Dan being the producer today. Our guest today is Julie Fry, and our next segment is Plead the Fifth.
Plead the Fifth, Julie, if you've listened to our podcast, which we hope we're not going to crack the top 12 of your podcasts, that you'll listen regularly to us. And now I just lost track. I was going to say, oh, we're going to pepper you with questions. See, I just lost track. We're going to pepper you with questions, and you can plead the fifth. This is going to be a little bit tougher. You can plead the fifth, but you can only plead the fifth once. So watch out if you do. This one shouldn't be too hard. I love to listen to books now, just like it's almost like podcasting. I love to listen to books. What is the best book? And I don't care what the genre is. It can be business, it can be fun, whatever it is. What's the best book that you've read and why?
There's two. So one is business, one is personal.
Okay.
Best business is The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz. Have either of you read that?
I've
No.
heard of him. I haven't read it, but I've heard about it.
So good. And he has a lot of books, but that one is my favorite. It's just about how to growing a successful business is a lot like growing a big, huge pumpkin. You got to trim off, what's not working and what's sucking energy and focus on the things that are going to get you a big pumpkin. So niching down, having a lean operation. It's just such a good read. So I love that book. And then I love The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin. That's a longtime favorite. I probably reread it every 2 years or so, but it's just her own self-experience over 12 months of focusing on a different area of her life to increase her happiness. And so it's a fun, I think, helpful personal development read.
Cool. Good to check on. That's great. Now I'm hungry. We're talking about pumpkins and it's lunchtime. So here, I want to ask you something here. Remember, you can plead the fifth if you want to choose this one. Have you ever been approached by a guest that you thought was just totally not sellable, not presentable to podcast hosts? And what do you do if that happens? Someone who's just outside of where they should be, not going to come across well. How do you handle that?
So yes, we have. And I have a lot of relationships with other folks in the space. So if they're not a fit for us, I'm happy to refer to other companies that might be a better fit. The other thing that we're actually doing is I'm going to host a workshop, a short workshop where people can learn how to kind of the why you'd want to be a podcast guest, how to go about finding the right shows, how to pitch the shows, and then tips on being a podcast guest. So I'm going to do a really small version of that workshop in August, and then kind of a bigger group in October. So I feel like that will really help the people that aren't ready for an agency like ours, but can kind of get them going down that path.
So I might be asking one of the tough, not that you won't answer, but this might be one of the tougher ones. You mentioned that you are an SNL, a Saturday Night Live fan. I go back to when they came on the air. I remember in June, I was in junior high. Linda is shaking her head. Yes. I mean, I remember Chevy Chase and Gilda Radner and John Belushi and Bill Murray and all of them. My question to you is, who is the all-time great, the GOAT of Saturday Night Live?
Oh, there's so many.
I know. And if you want to pick, if you want to break it up by era, I will allow you to do that.
Yeah. So several cast members left this year. One that I was really sad to see go is Kate McKinnon.
Yeah.
She's a rock star. Tina Fey, rock star. Yeah, those are probably my two favorite, but there's so many of them. Like Chris Kattan, fellow Puget Sounder. He was from Bainbridge Island, if you remember him from the 90s, I guess. So I have so many. And Conan was a writer on SNL years and years ago. So
do you remember? I got to ask. Do you remember Gilda Radner? Do you remember?
Yes.
Okay. So
I do. I do.
Roseanne,
kind of fuzzy memories of
and
that.
Jane
That was
Curtin it's just that original group, Garrett Morris, all of those, that original
that
group,
era makes me think of, I would have a babysitting gig and I'd get to watch Saturday Night Live because they wouldn't get home until 1 a.m, and I was like 13. So yeah, those are fun memories.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've watched it all these years.
I'm dating myself, but when I first started watching it, there were no DVR streaming, all that stuff. So the world stopped at 11:30 on Saturday night.
Oh yeah,
all sat in front of the TV set. That was, the good old days. So,
but several years ago, they switched to showing it at 8:30 on Saturday nights now on the West Coast. So that's great because I don't want to stay up until 11:30 and watch it. So that's perfect for me.
There you go. So going back to saying, best and greatest of all time, if you were able to have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and what question would you be asking them?
I knew this question was coming. I'd probably say Michelle Obama, and just hearing what it was like raising daughters as the first lady, and what it was like going from, I don't know if you read her book, but going from being in Chicago to living in the White House as the first African-American woman. And yeah, I just think that would be a really amazing conversation.
Would you have Barack there too, or would you leave?
I would love to have. I was debating, like, would it be Barack or would it be Michelle? So I'm hoping
both.
I'm hoping that he could find time to have dinner with me too.
If he's not off, windsurfing with Richard Branson or whatever.
Right.
He's probably golfing. He's an avid golfer. So he's probably golfing. When I first started my business, Julie, in 2005, one of my advisors mentioned podcasting. It was actually my website person. You should do podcasting. I didn't even know what it was. I had no idea. And that was 17 years ago. And it really, to me, hasn't been until maybe the last, 5-6 years that I felt this explosion of podcasting. What's the next evolution? Where does the form, because we're basically doing radio, aren't we? For all intents and purposes, we're kind of the
on-demand radio
evolution of radio.
To my mom. Yeah.
Yeah. What's
that scratchy AM dial? Yeah.
That's right. What's on the horizon? What do you think is the next evolution of podcasting?
There's a lot of talk about this. I think as a podcaster, you're a content creator, and content creators come in many forms now. There's YouTubers and Instagram influencers and TikTok creators. And, TikTok has been growing tremendously. And a lot of industry experts say that TikTok is the most underutilized way for podcasters to grow their podcast. that they should be spending more of their time there. I'm not on TikTok. I mean, I'll look on it occasionally, but I don't spend time there. But I do think that there's just going to continue to be an evolution of ways for people to be their own thought leaders and their own content creators on different platforms and things that are going to exist 3 years from now that we would have never even thought existed. Technology is just changing so fast now. I hope we can all keep up with it. So some form of content creation, but I'm not really sure what it is.
So talking about technology changing, there was a time, again, I'm dating myself, where you had to go to watch a TV show and then next week come back again and next week come back again.
Mm-hmm.
Then Netflix introduced this thing called binge watching.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, what is your favorite latest binge watching special, and what show would you tell us, oh, don't bother wasting the time on?
Let's see. So Succession was one that we binge watched recently, and I just loved it. I mean, the family was such a mess, but it's like a car accident. You just can't stop and you can't look away. Something that I have watched, usually if I start watching something and I don't like it, I just stop.
Mm-hmm.
The morning show was one that, everybody was like, oh, you should watch the morning show. And I watched it and I just couldn't get into it. The characters were not very likable. So yeah, I'm not much of a TV watcher. Like, it's kind of hard for me to sit there and watch. Maybe that's why I like podcasts so much, because I like being able to listen to things. But yeah.
All right. So we like listening and we like podcasts. So Julie, thank you so much for being a guest here on the Shrimp Tank. For listeners that want to get in touch with you, learn more about your company, maybe they want to either be a podcast guest or they're looking for guests, how do they get more information?
So the website is the best place. It's yourexpertguest.com, or you can email me at julie@yourexpertguest.com.
All right. And for those of you who love podcasts the way we do, make sure you check out all the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, and wherever you get your podcasts, such as iHeart, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, because damn, we are
Ubiquitous.
We are. And we have social media pages on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
So first of all, Julie, thank you for being here. We just binge watched the last season of Stranger Things. I couldn't put it down, so to speak. So if anybody's a Stranger Things fan, this season is excellent. But that's just an aside. We loved having you on the show. Thanks so much for being here, Linda. As always, thank you. Everyone, do exactly what Linda says. Go to our Facebook page, like us, and then you can live stream our show every week. We also would love it if you would go and rate us, review us, give us 5s while you're in there. Make sure that you're telling your friends. Our next show will be Wednesday, July the 20th. Our guest will be Eric Mailer with Cafe Cochina, which literally is about a 2-minute walk for me. I may be going and getting a mocha right after we talk. Eric will be talking about coffee next week. Our co-host will be Phil Simchich. In the meantime, please be safe, be well, and be prosperous, and listen to a bunch of podcasts. Because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.